Okay, so we're back now to the other portion of the database management. In the instruction, you were told to create the tables, put in the primary keys appropriately, which is 0.5, and then 0.6 now says you're to create appropriate relationships between tables. This step here, that's the step of creating relationships, is very important, and let me explain why. The tables are like two people who get married, for example, Everton and his wife. If they don't have a relationship, then they can't have any children. You know what I mean? So with the tables, if you don't join the tables in a relationship, then you can't pull the data from the table that you need. What will end up happening, sometimes you get duplicated information or data. And so in order to erase this or prevent this from happening, you will need to create your relationships. How do we create these relationships in database? It's very simple. So I'm going to just open up my screen so that you can see pretty well. I'm going to close this table by right-clicking on the tab and selecting close. Then I'm going to go to the database tools tab. I'm going to click on it. And in the relationships group here, I am going to click on relationships. I want to create relationships between all three tables. You can add the tables one by one by clicking on a table, say residence table, and click the add button, or you can highlight all the tables and click add once. But if you already added a table, you don't need to add it again. So since I already added the residence table, I'm not going to highlight everything. I'm only going to highlight the next two, which are the resident rooms table and the rooms table, and then click on the add button. Then I'm going to click on either the close icon here or the close button here, whichever, it does the same thing. I'm going to just rearrange my tables on my screen a little bit to make it easier for you to see how the relationships work. If you want to move a table, click on the top of the table where the name is, hold it down and click and drag. Say, for example, you accidentally added a table by accident. So I'm going to add another residence table. Your additional tables will always have a number at the end of the name here. How do you go ahead and remove this table? You right click on the head of the table like that and say hide table, and it will go away. Now, how do we create relationships? It's very important that you listen to what I'm saying and follow the instructions exactly as I give it. We create relationships between fields that are common between two tables, right? Just as Everton and his wife have the same last name, Jones. So you know, not everybody who have the same last name, Jones, are related, but 10 to 1, there's some relation there. So what I'm going to do, the main table here is a resident table where resident num belongs. This resident rooms table also has a res num. What I do, I put my mouse over the res num in residence table. I click on it. And when I say click on it, I mean the left click. Select click. Click on it, hold it down. I drag it directly over the res num here. I make sure that my white mouse arrow pointer is pointing directly on res num, because we're joining res num with res num, before I release my mouse. When I release my mouse, both these columns in the edit relationships dialog box should say res num. If both of them are not saying res num, then you did it wrong, so you have to do it over. I check the box here that says enforce referential integrity, meaning you ensure that the res num in resident table matches the res nums in the resident rooms table. And this is where you have to be careful when you're building the tables. The resident numbers must be the same in both tables. It's the same thing with the room code. All right, then we click on create. When I click on create, it creates what we call a one-to-many. So we have a one resident can be assigned to more than one room type. You can change the residence rooms. All right. So this infinity symbols means many. We're going to do the same thing for the rooms table. We're just going to start from the rooms code in the main table, which is the rooms table. So we click on the rooms code, hold down the mouse, drag it and put it directly over. Look at where my white mouse pointer is. It's over room code. Once it is over room code, I release my mouse I click on enforce referential integrity and I click the create button. It creates a second one-to-many relationship. My relationships are complete and I'm going to save my relationships. Right click on the relationships tab and click close. We are now ready to do our queries. So let me explain what your queries are. You can refer to your notes for additional information, but in brief, your queries are really questions. You know, when you go somewhere, you query something, you're finding out information about that particular thing that you're querying. With queries, you're asking questions of your database. You want to pull out, for example, all the persons who are male, all the persons who are female, all the persons who were born before a certain time. And before I do that, I'm going to do something to my residence table. You won't have to do this because you'd have been bringing your residence table over from your spreadsheet with the date of birth in it. Remember, I didn't have any in mind. So I'm going to open another database that I have with some date of birth. So I don't want to have to sit and type multiple date of births now. I'm going to open a database and I'm going to copy the date of birth from that database. So let's just wait a little while that database takes a little time to load. All right, so this is a database that I want to use. I'm going to look for the resident rooms table, which is this table here. So all I'm going to, oh, not this one, sorry, the residence table. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to, there's no date of birth there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to type it. And I thought I had done my date of birth before. Unfortunately, I didn't. All right, so let me just put in my date of birth quickly and avoid the issue. All right, so here, so we're gonna make sure the persons are at least 60, right? So just put in some random date of birth. So I'm just gonna put in the data quickly.
Miss.
Yes, Everton.
I'm going to turn off this phone and go on my daughter's phone, yeah?
That's fine. I just admitted you from Anicia's phone.
Yeah, I'm going to turn off this now.
All right, no problem.
Yes, here I am.
All right, no problem. Just 2 more and then I'm done. All right, so here we have our data, but I don't believe I'm going to be using a telephone number any at all, so I won't have to trouble that. But make sure that you have a database when you come over. All right. How do we create our queries? Most things are done under the Create tab. So we click on the Create tab. Now, before we start doing the queries, I'm going to say, before we start doing the queries, we need to look at what the requirements are for our queries. Let me minimize this database or close it rather. I should have minimized it, but it's all right. Let us look now at the requirements for the queries. So we have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 queries. I may have to add a 6th, but let us see what happens. There is one that I'm not 100% sure about. I'm sorry about the noise in the background. There is a water meter collection man walking around, so the dogs are creating havoc now, but let us see if we can work through that. It says, show a list of all residents living in a single room, save it as single room. So what I'm going to do, so I don't want to have to type this later on, I'm going to copy this for the time being, copy the name of the query, and then show a list of all the residents living in a single room. So it's a specific room that we're looking for. First step to creating your query. We click on the Create tab. Then, in the Queries group, we click on the Query Design. Now, that will allow your Show Table dialog box to pop up on your screen. Now, if you want a list of all the residents who are living in a single room, it means that you need the resident's name, their resident number. You also need to know the room that they're in. So that means we need 2 tables. We need a residence table that will give us the name, etc. And we also need the rooms table. But because there's no link between these 2 tables, we have to add a 3rd table, which will provide that link, which is a residence rooms. So whenever you add tables, if you realize there's no link, then you add the table that provides a link between the 2 tables. I already double clicked on them, so I don't need to click on the add button. I just close. Now, we have to add the fields that we need. So we're going to need the resident number. We're going to need the first name, the last name. We're going to need the room type because they want the single rooms. Persons living in the single rooms, right? How do we move these field names down to this grid down here? Now, I want you to look carefully at the grid. This is a query grid. In the query grid, we have different types. We have these fields. But before I get down here, let us talk about the different types of queries. We have select query, make table query, append query, update, cross tab, delete, and there are some others here. Now, the type of query that is automatically selected is the select query. The one we will be using to answer the question is the select query because we're just selecting a set of data from the table, which is all the residents who live in a single room. So we make sure that select is selected. And in the grid, you see field name, the table that the field is coming from. If you want to sort it, this row, I'll explain to you later on what that means, and I'll show you too. And this now is a criteria. The criteria is what determines which rows or records are pulled out. It will only pull out those records that you want to pull out. If you have more than one criteria, then you type the next criteria in the OR. But bear in mind, when you're typing the criteria, you have to type it under the appropriate field name. So let us add the fields to the grid. 3 ways to add the field. We can click on the field, hold it down and drag it and put it over the field cell. It will tell you exactly which table it comes from. Second method, we want the first name and the last name. I can double click and it will add the field name in the next appropriate column, next available column rather. Then the next thing we want to add is the room type. Now the third method is to click in the next available column, drop down the arrow, look for a room type. So we scroll down. So room type is in the rooms table. Scroll back up, and it's sometimes difficult to see because it doesn't show the entire thing. So rooms table, and this is the one that says this is a room type. You can't really see it good, but I know it is a room type because it's the very last field and then room cost, right? So I click on it and it will bring up room type. Notice that the boxes here are checked. They are checked because when we produce the results, we want all of these fields to show. If I didn't want the field to show, then I can uncheck the field. For example, I can uncheck this. I'll show you afterwards how does that works. Now remember, we're looking for the single rooms. So you have to remember exactly how the room looks. For example, if I open the rooms table, sorry, the rooms, yes. Room type, table, yes, the room type says single, S-I-N-G-L-E. You have to type back exactly as it appears here. So I'm going to go back to my query, and under room type, in the criteria row, if you look, you'll see it is in the criteria row. I'm going to open double quotation because when you're typing words or letters in the criteria, you have to put it in double quotation marks. And then I'm going to type single just as it appears in the table, close my double quotation marks, and I'm ready to run the query. Once you have finished designing the query, if you're not seeing the run icon here, then just click on the design tab and click on the run icon. The run icon is used to execute the query so that you can see which persons fit the criteria, right? And the only persons we have here who have single rooms are Earl James and Carl Jones. And we can double check that. We can look in the rooms table. We can look in the resident rooms table and look. So it's going to be hard to see because you have to use the room code, but you can cross-check the room code with the rooms table to see which one means single, and then the residence number in the residence table to see which of them is the person's name. But this is our query, and we're going to save our query. So we right-click on the name, query one, say save. And remember earlier we had copied the name of the query, which is single room. So I'm pasting it, then I click OK to save the query, and the first query is finished. All right, you don't have to close anything. You can leave everything up on your screen and move to the next query. It says show a list of all male residents born before 1955. Now, this is the reason why I had to put in the date of birth, because in my solution, I don't have it because I did not put in any date of birth. All right, so if a person was born before a particular date, it's all the dates that fall before the year 1995. All right, so all male residents. So now we have two criteria. The persons have to be a male, and they have to be born before 1955. Now, students, do not be alarmed if when you run this query, you get no values. Because if you have no values that match the two criteria, it has to match both criteria for it to work. Then you are not going to get any answers. I don't know if I have any data matching that criteria. But let me just go ahead and try. So we go back to the database, same steps, create, query design. Now we want those male residents born before 1955. So the only table we're going to need in this case is a residence table. So I double click on it and I close the show table dialog box. I'm going to put in, so you tell me now, which fields do you think you're going to need if you want only the male residents born before 1955?
I got gender.
All right, but give me in a nice little order. We're gonna definitely need a gender, yes, but give me a nice little order.
All right. This way I have here. So you have you say resident number, that's the key, and then we have first name, last name, and then the gender.
Missing one thing.
Date of birth?
Yes, date of birth. So for this one, we don't really need the residence number because it's just one table. So just gonna select first name,
So the name, date of birth, and
date of birth, and gender.
Gender.
Okay. Now let me look to see how I had typed the gender. All right, so I had typed it out as in capital M, then ALE. So in the criteria row, I'm going to type under gender in double quotation marks, MALE, close double quotation mark. Now the date of birth part is the tricky part. So is it any date that fall before 1955? What's the last date before the year 1955? Give me the exact date. Exact date.
Have been December 31st, 1954.
All right, so I'm going to type that in. So 31st of the 12th, 1954.
Four.
Right. So any date before this would have been, what you call it now? Or sorry. So this would have been the last date. What I really need to type in is the 1st of the 1st, 1955. Right, the 1st of the 1st, 1955. But it's important for you to understand the other one, because what you do now is after you type in the 1st of the 1st, 1955, you say all the dates that are less than. And the less than sign there means before. They come before the 1st,
Okay.
1955. So they would start at the 31st of the 12th, 1954, and then go backwards. Now let us see if it works. All right, so let us run the query. So I actually got 4. Wow, I didn't realize I had so many and so many males. But remember, students, as I said, you may or may not have any. All right, so I got the 10-minute window to stop within 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to end this session on this query, because sometimes query take a little bit of time and I don't want to have the recording end on the next query. So I'm going to end this session and you're going to do just as what you did before. All right.